Hey, welcome to the Proview Network studios here in Albuquerque. Another edition of Local Focus. I'm your host, Sebastian Noel. Excited to have with us a guy that is going to be fighting for the Combates America championship belt on the 28th. And it's Combates America's debut, actually, in New Mexico. Let's take a look at that promo video right here before we meet our guest.
Este 28 de junio, el primer cinturón peso pluma en la historia de Combate América. Estará en juego. El neo-mexicano Andrés "The Bullet" Quintana se enfrentará al argentino Bruno Aquiles Canetti en una de las revanchas más esperadas en el mundo de las artes marciales mixtas. Viernes 28 de junio, Santa Ana Star Center de Río Rancho, Nuevo México. Boletos disponibles en combateamericas.com. Diagonal, New Mexico.
My guest is Andrés "The Bullet" Quintana. That's got to be pretty exciting that the organization's debut right in your backyard, right?
Of course, Sebastian, and also I want to say thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be on your show.
Any added pressure when you're fighting at home? I know you're so used to being on the road. Does being at home provide new and different challenges? Folks hitting you up for tickets, stuff like that?
Somewhat. It's different. But also, I know I'm not going to get hometown, you know, like a lot of people get screwed over in a decision if they fight away when they're fighting in someone else's backyard. So I'm really excited for that. You know, I got a lot of love for New Mexico, and I'm sure that they love me back, and I'm super excited to put on an amazing show for them and be fighting for the main event and world title here.
And the added excitement, obviously, is that you're fighting for a strap, right?
Yeah.
I know you've been on record before saying, "Hey, the belt doesn't matter. I'm the best anyway."
Yeah.
But now they're going to put a shiny one around your waist, so that's got to be pretty good, right?
Of course. You know, I won the Copa Combate back in December, so I mean, it kind of proved that I was the best and that I am the best, and I'm gonna continue to prove that because I'm having a rematch, and I already beat this guy, and we're going to go out there and make no ands or buts about it this time.
Talked about the Copa Combate. For our audience that doesn't know what that is, that's a tournament that you fought 3 fights in one night.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It's crazy tournament.
My first question would be, how is that sanctioned and legal?
You know, I don't deal with any of the sanctioning, so they tell me show up to fight, you're fighting 3 people, if you keep on winning, I was like, all right, let's do it. I'm going to go in there, I'm going to get that grand prize, and just get my word, you know.
And that's got to present challenges in itself.
Of course.
Because you're preparing for 3 opponents, but you don't really have that much time to, I mean, you don't know what the bracket's going to shape up like. Talk about the challenges and getting ready for that event.
You know, it was probably more pressure on my coaches than myself. You know, I go in there and I just do what my coaches tell me, but yeah, we had 7 different opponents that we could possibly fight at any different style and range, and you know, maybe even more, because if people get hurt, they had backups, and if someone couldn't continue on to the next round, someone else was going to come in, and so it's really difficult, you know. So you kind of just try and focus on yourself and go in there and prepare as much as you can and be the best version of yourself that you can that night.
First fight of that night, from what I understand, is a 1-round, 5-minute thing.
Yes.
So that's got to present challenges in itself. If you're a slow starter in any way,
Yeah.
which luckily you're not, obviously.
And the funny thing is, I am kind of a slow starter. You
That's
know,
got to be pretty intense, right? Like 1 round, 5 minutes?
Yeah. And and we had a qualifier even before the tournament. I had to qualify to get into the tournament. So, and the qualifier was also 1 round 5 minutes. But again, I finished my guy in like 2.5 minutes. So it was nice, you know. I got in there, qualified, and I had that experience behind me. Since like I said, I'm a little bit of a slower starter. I went in the back and we got really, really good warm up. Like I was already in the fight, and so I went out there like it was the second round of my fight.
Let's talk a little bit about your background. You grew up in El Paso, right? Is that kind of where your toughness, where it all started?
Yeah, I was born and brought up a little bit in Roswell. I think I moved to El Paso about when I was 3 years old. Right. You know, and to me, when I was a young kid, I was a little sissy because, you know, my mom had me pretty young, 16, 17. I'm not too sure her exact age. And, you know, my grandma, I was the first grandkid, so my grandma babied me like crazy. And so I didn't know what it was to be tough until I kind of went out there and got some local friends of my own. And, you know, they were tough kids, you know, and they toughened me up a lot, and we kind of started boxing in the backyard, and that's kind of where I got my start, was in El Paso. And one of my good friends, Gabriel, was you know, kind of the leader of all of us, and he grew up, you know, rough, and we grew up in the ghetto, and you know, we fought to survive, basically.
Now, you were telling me the story this morning about kind of these small boxing not clubs, not rings, but groups, right? That your parents kind of, that your dad kind of, talk about that.
So my stepdad, his name is Eddie Velez. He owned a car wash, and he also owned a car club, and they had all these drag ready Mustangs, and in the car wash they would get bored and be hanging out, doing some stuff for like Toys for Tots or something, and they're like, hey, let's get some boxing gloves and let's box, you know. I don't know exactly how it started, but that's kind of the idea. And eventually the younger kids kind of wanted to jump in too, and you know, one of the members, his name was Junior, and he's all, hey, my nephew's about your son's age. I could bring him by next time, and they could box. And I was like, yeah, sure, you know. And that's kind of how it started, and it kind of evolved ever since.
Now, it's a little bit of scuttle on these fights, or?
Not that I know of personally, so.
Good answer.
Yeah, honestly, it's the truth.
I told you this morning, I said the only time I ever seen this was on Law & Order SVU, right?
Yeah,
where they started the child boxing ring, the gambling, and then the cops come and break everything up.
And we all just did it for fun, you know, just to pass the time. And
we're going to take our first time out here. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about your upbringing in Roswell. You know, your middle school is kind of when you started to fight, and that's a very young age to get into the fight game, and we'll pick it up from there when we come back.
What is glamour? Frailty. What is desire? Diamonds. They say a life lived without passion is hardly worth living.
Ma'am? Ma'am? Ma'am?
Dang, this one made me feel all special.
The New Mexico High School Coaches Association, established in 1941, is an organization of New Mexico's best and most professional interscholastic coaches. Coaches across work daily to help our student athletes excel in the classroom, on the field of play, and in our communities. Students that participate in interscholastic activities attain higher grades, higher graduation rates, and higher wages. Responsible for the North-South All-Star Games, statewide Coaches Award Program, and providing multiple professional development opportunities for New Mexico's coaches. Be a great coach by coaching beyond the game.
The Albuquerque Dragway is a proud sponsor of Proview Networks. Visit abqdragway.com for directions and a full event schedule.
Don't sacrifice quality of flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
We're back with Andres "The Bullet" Quintana. He'll be fighting June 28th at Santa Ana Star Center for the Combates America Featherweight World Championship, but we're in his younger days right now, and Roswell, where most people are picking up, little league, baseball, football. You get into the fight game pretty early. Talk about that. Include you started in football, but you didn't like that. Talk about that.
Yeah. So I was young, 8 maybe or so, and my stepdads are like, why don't you do a sport? I was like, all right, whatever. I like football. Let's try football. I kind of just didn't like the team sport, team atmosphere. Kind of like, oh, if I could play my spot perfectly, but still lose the game from the other people on the other side of the ball. So I was like, wow, I kind of like want to be more self-dependent. And so as I was in my backyard boxing with all my friends and stuff, I was like, hey, there's fights. People fight for money. I was like, why can't I do this? And in El Paso, I never really got into actual gym, just training with my friends and watching cartoons and anime. I watched Dragon Ball Z a lot, and I was like, hey, these guys train and get stronger. Why can't I do the same? Because I was one of the younger ones, so I kind of got beat up on whenever we would all put the gloves on, and I would always want to. I'm like, damn, I want to beat all these guys, and I was trying to figure out a way on how to do it, and obviously training was the way. So we fast forward a little bit. My parents get a divorce, and we move back to Roswell. And as we're loading up and stuff, I tell my friends, like, hey, when I come back, I'm gonna be able to whoop you guys. And I kept my word. I go to Roswell and I find a local gym. My first trainer was Edward V. Hill. I believe he was helping out Jeremy de Los Santos at the time, and Jeremy had a gym in Roswell, and he was able to let me, he wasn't training anyone, but he let me come in and train with Edward, and that's kind of just how it started. And eventually, after a few fights, just life happened, and I changed trainers and finally found my main coach, Lupe Perez. He raised me my entire amateur career. I think I had 3 or 4 fights whenever I finally found Lupe Perez. And that's where I spent my entire amateur career, maybe 40 fights, about 40, 45 fights with Lupe. My senior year, I had like 15 fights because I was doing MMA and boxing at the same time. I started MMA at 16 years old, and you're not supposed to be 16 and fighting, so I was 18 for 3 years. Yeah.
Okay. So you had the old Dominican Republic Little League birth certificate?
Exactly.
Is that what you had? Or
I didn't even give my birth certificate. Just asked how old I was, and I just would bump up the year every time I gained a year.
Right.
So I was 18 for 3 years fighting.
So obviously, most middle school kids are not training, and you talked about you took on a ton of amateur fights.
Yeah.
How intense was your training already at this middle school level?
I would go in right after school, and I'd train for 3 or 4 hours at a time. And, of course, at the beginning, I was learning my basics and just bumping it up from there. After a year or two, I was like in full camp, as much as I could be. Once I got to high school, I was really dedicated, and I wanted to be a world champion. And so I would get up before school. I'd go on my runs, do my road work, do my push-ups, my sit-ups, all this stuff, my pull-ups, everything that I needed to do.
So that was before school, right?
Before school,
What kind of numbers are we talking about here?
I'd run about 5 miles. I'd come do 100 push-ups, 300 sit-ups, and another 100 pull-ups, right before school, and then go home, take a shower, and get ready for school. Take off.
What'd you do this morning before work, Josh? Yeah, I had a bagel with some cream cheese this morning.
Yep, exactly.
And that's in high school.
Yeah.
So obviously you got to be missing out on some things that your friends were doing at the time, right?
Oh, of course.
But you were already all in on being world champion, right?
Exactly. I would watch the greats. I'd watch Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, all the great boxers. And at the time, I didn't know much about MMA. I was like, I want to be a world champion boxer at a young age, And so my goal was to become professional relatively young, 18, 17, And so that's what I wanted to do.
So you go to school till about 2:30, 3:30, and then what do you do after school?
Yeah, so at the time, right after school, I picked up a job because, I needed money, I needed, some dough. I wanted a car, I wanted to drive, I wanted to be able to get myself around town and stuff. So I started working with my Uncle Joe, at the school. And I'd work until about 5 o'clock and go straight from school to work, and then right after work, right back to the gym from 5 until 8 or 9 at night, and then wake up and do it all over again. I didn't, needless to say, I really didn't have time for homework.
Right. Well, and so how many fights were you participating in at this time when you were in high school? How many fights would you take a year, would you say?
My senior year, I believe I fought 15 times, and that's in a 9-month span. So I was fighting about every 2 weeks, whether it be MMA or boxing, a tournament, anything.
What are the differences between the two, getting as far as the preparation side?
Boxing's more repetition. We go a lot more live in MMA. We have our sparring days also for MMA, but it's a lot more safe to wrestle and grapple than it is to spar every day. So we're wrestling and grappling in MMA all the time, so it's more hands-on. And also, like boxing's, you could only use 2 hands, that's it. So it's, I don't want to say one-dimensional, but it's limited, I guess you can say, boxing. You go in there and you hit stuff all the time, all the time. That's what you do. Of course you have your cardio and your strength conditioning and stuff like that, but your main thing is you're punching and you're punching and you're punching. And in MMA, you can kick, you can knee, you can elbow, you can take down people, you could wrestle, you can grapple, submit them. There's a wide variety of ways to win and lose.
Right, and you took me this morning. You took me kind of through an average day of preparing for a boxing match in a boxing camp, and can you take our audience through that? Just the amount of bag work and all that.
Yeah, usually like if I'm stepping into the gym, like I usually do my road work at a separate time. If I'm in boxing camp, I'll do my 5-mile run or however many miles I got to go that day, and then I'll do my push-ups, sit-ups, and stuff. And then I'll take a break, and then I'll come back to the gym. As soon as I get to the gym, my coach would have me do my 100 push-ups, my 300 sit-ups minimum, if not more. Then we would go into our pull-ups, 100 pull-ups, and then we would have our our shadow boxing starting to get warm, about 4 to 6 rounds, and another 4 to 6 rounds of jump rope. And so now we're warm. We're getting the engine started.
Oh, now we're warm.
That's our warm up.
Go figure. Now we're warm.
Yeah, so now we're ready to actually start hitting. So then we'll wrap our hands and we'll get.
Are you taking notes, by the way? That's 100 sit-ups,
Daily.
300 pull-ups. Now we're warm. All right.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And so now we get into our actual striking, and then now we go about 12 rounds of bag work. So, and then after bag work, sometimes we'll even hit mitts or do some strength conditioning stuff, depending on how we're feeling. It's a long day.
And I guess the part that just baffles me is you've really never known another way, right?
No, this is how I was brought up, I've had a few jobs, like I worked in Roswell. There's a big company called Leprino, and I worked that 9 months, and it was weird to me. It was like, this is what people do, I was like, I'm used to training all the time, It's different.
We're going to take another time out, and we'll come back and talk about some fights you've had leading up to this.
Of course.
Again, that's June 28th at the Santa Ana Star Center. We'll be right back.
Sadie's is a proud supporter of New Mexico high school sports and athletics, and we here at Proview Networks would like to thank Sadie's for their continued support in helping us bring you all of your New Mexico high school sports coverage.
Get into the game with Garden Swartz Team Sales. They have everything you need, from screen printing, embroidery, and digital printing services, high school letterman jackets, and all high school and club uniforms, and individual and team apparel with the most reliable brands like Speedline, Rollins, and Wilson. And don't forget to check out the latest F7 Shut helmet. It's all at Garden Swartz Team Sales. Give them a call, 505-884-1234. Garden Swartz Team Sales.
Folks, there's no other way but to be all in. Either he's Lord of all or he is not Lord at all. And you can experience the real and authentic, true life change that only God can provide to humanity. See, when we truly encounter Jesus and purpose to know him and follow his teachings, hashtag life change will occur.
Car Crafters, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network. Are you sure we're supposed to be doing this?
Don't worry, I've watched him do it 1,000 times. Come on, what's the worst that can happen?
No! Bad dog!
Hi, welcome to Car Crafters. What happened?
Don't worry, we'll make it like it never happened.
Car Crafters, it's like it never happened.
My guest is Andres the Bullet Quintana. He'll be fighting on June 28th at the Star Center for the Combates America featherweight title. But let's take us back to the 3 fights in one night. Take us through those 3 fights.
You know, my first fight was I fought a really good guy, really tough guy. My hat's off to him. But my boxing was just better, you know. I beat him to the punch every time with my jab, and I just out-jabbed him and mixed in my MMA, shot a few takedowns, you know, kept them guessing. And I cruised to a nice little decision. I'm in the back, and I calf kicked him a whole bunch, so my ankle was already hurting. And I'm like, shit, man. I was like, let's get some ice on all this. And they give us 30 minutes in between fights.
Oh, that's nice of them.
Yeah.
30 minutes?
30 whole minutes after an entire fight, yeah. 3 times in one night. And so I go in the back, and we're icing up. And my next guy, I don't really know much about, and because I didn't know who I was fighting, because it's a pyramid style. And we go in there, and it's already time. I warm up a little bit, time to go back out. Walking out, it's nice because I'm fighting in America, and I'm representing America, and I'm fighting all these other countries. And I have the United States Marines, I believe, right next to my right. So I come out with my flag, I wave it, everyone cheers, and it's awesome. It's amazing, amazing time. And I go in there, and I'm fighting this guy from Argentina, and this is the guy I'm having a rematch with. I come in here, and he's fighting out of alpha male. And I think he's a wrestler. I was like, oh, he's from Uriah Faber's camp. He's gonna try and shoot on me. So I stay really low. He starts kicking the crap out of me, kicks my leg a whole bunch. I was like, all right, I'm getting some damage.
So he took you down early, right?
Yeah.
Early in the fight, yeah.
Yeah, he kicks me a whole bunch, and he throws a wild overhand right and clips me, and I don't expect him to be throwing any hands much. I wasn't waiting for a shot, and he clips me. I'm like, oh crap, you know, he hit me pretty good. He doesn't land anymore. I stay really nice and tight and close. I get back up, and we're in a clinch, and I knock him out with the uppercut and a left hook combination. And he's down, and he falls kind of like a tree, chopping a tree down, and falls real slow motion. And that's how he is. And I jump on him, start raining some big right hands on him. And he's out of it, and he tries to grab a single leg, and he reaches around my leg and just gives me his back, and I just keep on throwing punches until the ref steps in, and him and his brother jump in, saying that there was that early stoppage and all this.
Well, and so in typical Argentinian fashion, you know, Leo Messi, bit of a crybaby out on the soccer pitch. You know, he goes down a lot.
Yeah.
De Rossi, same thing. Kind of, you know, they go down, they cry. I don't know if you watch a lot of soccer, but I noticed that when Argentina plays, there tends to be some crying. So they're saying that maybe it was an early stoppage, right?
Yeah, but I was smashing him. He wasn't responding. He didn't defend himself at all. And they were like, oh, I don't know why you stopped me whenever I had Andres on the ground. I was like, you didn't even hit me one more time on the ground, you know. But it is what it is, and that's why we're having this rematch.
Broadcasters on the American side kind of questioned whether it was an early stoppage. We talked about that a little bit, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Juliana Pena has it out for me. She always is always like, oh, Andres isn't doing so good. Oh, this guy needs to do this to beat Andres. She never gives me a fair shake, and I don't know why, but you know, we all have haters, and if she is one, I don't mind.
Yeah, there you go. And so obviously that adds a little bit of spice to the to this main event at the Star Center is the Argentinian crying.
Yeah, exactly.
And so talk about that.
You know, it's good to know that Argentina cries about everything.
Now you know. I mean, now you know.
I didn't know.
It's a Leo Messi thing.
Yeah.
There's two things that there's two things athletes from Argentina do: is they cry and they don't pay their taxes.
Yeah.
Those are the two things. I mean, you watch the news and that's what happens, my man. That's what happens. So any added, I guess, motivation that, you know, there's this little bit of
you know,
not dislike, but definitely something happened, right?
Somewhat, you know, because, you know, after I won the entire tournament, we were back in the lobby, and he's like trying to mad dog me, and I'm like, well, do something. I'm right here, you know. I just whooped your ass right now, so I'll do it again. So it kind of bugged me. So.
And now, $100,000 and a nice trophy at the end, right?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
So you took home a pretty nice payday at the end of this tournament, right?
Yes, I did. you know, and that's what it's about. I'm a prize fighter, and we're all about making that money. At least I am.
Right. And now, do they have these tournaments often? Does Combates America put these on often? Is this an annual event?
I believe once a year, yeah,
Okay.
towards the end of the year. It's supposed to be their biggest event, and I believe it is their biggest event because my final fight had like 4.3 million viewers or something in that ballpark.
Is this something you'd look forward to again in the future?
They'll probably do it at another weight class, and since I already won, they probably wouldn't even, you know, offer it to me. You know, I would assume.
Now, one of the funnier stories you told me earlier today was when you first kind of got into this fight game, how your family responded to it.
Yeah.
Right?
So,
but save the grandma story for the very end.
Okay.
But actually, let's show the knockout first.
Okay, of course.
So let's show how you finished off this opponent here. So I'd say that's a pretty convincing finish to a fight there.
What a spinning back elbow, huh?
Right. That's something you can look forward to June 28th at the Star
Exactly.
Center. But talk about how your family kind of reacted to you wanting to get into fighting.
You know, my mom was okay with pure boxing, and my family was okay with pure boxing. But once I wanted to start doing MMA, they were a little worried. You know, we had to convince my mom. You know, just let me do MMA. We had to chip away at her in a way. You know. Oh, he'll be all right. He'll be all right. He's training, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing that, and eventually, I was able to get into it.
But it's your story about your grandma that I just love.
Yeah, my grandma, bless her soul. You know, I'm the first grandbaby. You know, I'm like her baby. So she would go to try and watch me fight, and I'd fight towards the end of the card. I was usually main event, co-main event. You know. And she would walk in and she'd see the people fighting and she'd start crying and she'd be like, I can't do this, I'm walking out, you know. So it's just how grandmas are, you know.
So has she ever made it through and stayed at the venue and watched you fight, or has it always been tears right away?
Lately.
Okay, so
now
she's getting better.
Yeah, she is. She's going to be at this fight.
Okay.
So I'm excited. I can't wait to put on a great show for everyone, my grandma, my family, of course. And she watches me on TV now. She watched the tournament live, so not too bad.
This is a televised event, by the way, on June 28th, so you can catch that as well. What channels is that? I believe that's an English and Spanish broadcast, right?
Yes, in Spanish it'll be on Univision Deportes, and then in English it'll be on the app, The Zone, and you could download that off your phone.
So the last couple of minutes, I think we have about a minute and a half left here. One thing I did notice about you is you're always a pretty good talker before your fight, right?
Yeah.
I think you called an opponent an old man once.
I did. He was old. He was old.
Right? So I'm gonna give you the last minute and a half here. If there's anything you want to say about your opponent here, or what pre-fight media have you done, if any? And kind of, you know, tell us about the opponent a little bit here.
You know, I've been doing a ton of interviews. You know, I'm fighting for a world title, so it's to be expected. You know, and I have one of my sponsors, Gabe Romo. He's on my hat. You know, awesome guy. Super excited. I really appreciate him. You know, I have so many people that help me all the time, and it's been overwhelming how many interviews I've done. For the tournament as well, I did a ton of interviews. I have people calling me. My schedule is literally packed. Since this morning, since we had coffee, I went from having coffee straight to the gym, straight to media. There were so many people from media. They came into my gym taking pictures, doing video interviews, meet and greets, doing some promo for Facebook. Then had to run right to my doctor, make sure I'm good, fixed up, and that's why I was a little late here, you know. But forgive me for that. But you know, we made it, and you know, I just packed schedule. Now I got to jump back into boxing here at 5 here very shortly. And so not much time to rest in between.
So it really never ends, but I guess that's what to be expected when you were fighting for a world title, right? So,
exactly.
You know, come back in a couple of weeks, show us the belt, all right?
Yeah,
Good luck.
Of course. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Sebastian.
We'll see you next week, everybody.
See you.
Este 28 de junio, el primer cinturón peso pluma en la historia de Combate América. Estará en juego el neo-mexicano Andrés Quintana. Se enfrentará al argentino Bruno Aquiles Canetti en una de las revanchas más esperadas en el mundo de las artes marciales mixtas. Viernes 28 de junio, Santa Ana Star Center de Río Rancho, Nuevo México. Boletos disponibles en combateamericas.com/New Mexico.